Star Trek has taken us to hundreds of new worlds. Some of them looked like someone's basement with a tarp thrown over the wall, while others were wondrous and thrilling to behold. Many of them, however, sit somewhere in the middle, redressed in new episodes, waiting to cover our comrades in smoke and Metamucil. The earliest new worlds in the original series were excuses to show off that fancy new Technicolor technology. So, grab an environmental suit, a phaser rifle, and hop in that transporter. Just do yourself a favor and don't wear red. I'm Bree from TrekCulture, and here are 10 of the strangest worlds in Star Trek. Number 10. Murder Planet. This charmingly named world, thank you Jenkum Pog, is one of the strangest on this list. While it's not the most dangerous planet that has ever been depicted in Star Trek, it is one of the few that is actively trying to kill anyone unlucky enough to set foot on its surface. When the protostar lands on its surface, the young crew quickly discover that it is a place where dreams come true. Those dreams might be nightmares, but they're dreams nonetheless. The entire planet is linked under its surface, allowing coordinated attacks on unsuspecting prey, while also manifesting these poor creatures' desires to entice them into traps. The planet's own properties may have inspired a native species to take to the stars, but still retains some of the lessons that their homesteads bestowed upon them. Murder Planet was located, according to Hologram Janeway, in the Hirogen system. Almost all Hirogen representatives encountered by Starfleet before this stardate had been nomadic by nature, with no mention of a homeworld. It's unclear when Starfleet was able to discover and categorize this system as the Hirogen system, but Hologram Janeway names it with some authority, suggesting absolute confirmation of the fact. The Hirogen encountered by Starfleet began to make a little more sense after the visit to this world. If a species had been trained from birth to kill everything around them lest they be killed by anything from water to plants, would that not encourage decent hunting skills? I'd sure think so. Number 9. Meridian. Meridian, or Trialis 1, was a planet in the Gamma Quadrant that existed in this dimension for a short period of time. In fact, when the USS Defiant entered the Trialis system, the planet popped up to say hello, for the first time in 60 years, and even then it was only due to stick around for 12 days. What we have here, folks, is a classic Brigadoon planet. The locals of Meridian aren't quite sure what causes this dimensional hopping, though they know enough to say it's related to the Trialis star. Between periods of normal spacetime, the planet and everything on it would shift into a realm of pure consciousness. This was wonderful as an anti-aging method, but the shortened stays in normal space had effectively killed the chance for reproduction the old-fashioned way. Despite Jadzia Dax's affection for one of the locals named Darrell, she could only pass on the knowledge of how to help, rather than join the Meridians on its next hop into consciousness. Though she believed she altered her body's chemistry enough to join them, it wasn't to be, and her presence almost destroyed the world and everyone on it. Jadzia herself wouldn't be around for Meridian's next phase into this reality, but it is entirely possible that Ezri Dax could have popped along to say hello in about 2431? Number 8. Remus. Remus was one of the planets in the Romulus system, and was one of the Romulan Empire's key dilithium mining locations. The indigenous population, if they were indeed indigenous, had evolved to exist in near-total darkness thanks to their lives on the dark side of the planet. Remus was tidally locked, meaning that one side always faced the sun. This baked half the world and banished everything and everyone to the other side. Though the Remans had a fierce reputation as warriors, the Romulans kept them in a state of slave labor, forcing them to dig the mines while also engaging in brutal and bloody battles, particularly during the Dominion War. Little more has ever been learned about Remus and its people, with most of the outside contact occurring in 2379. Shinzon, the clone of Captain Picard and now leader of the Remans, orchestrated a coup d'etat, poisoning the Romulan Senate with radiation and planning a full-scale invasion of the Federation for good measure. In doing so, he displayed the Remans' technological advancement over their Romulan cousins. They possessed the technology to cloak their ships, while still retaining the ability to fire. Remus was among the ruins of the supernova that devastated the Romulan Empire in 2387, presumably making the Remans just as nomadic as their cousins. Number 7. Beta Omicron Delta 3. There are worlds in the Milky Way galaxy that contain such wonders as the mortal mind could hope to possess. But there were a few, like the one first encountered in the episode Shore Leave. This world was a simple playground, ready to offer its guests their heart's desires. The only limit was their own imagination. The now iconic image of the white rabbit may have struck McCoy as a little odd, but when one considers just how far down the rabbit hole this planet could have gone, he should count himself pretty lucky. Fake-out death included, by the way. In 2266, it was a relatively harmless world. Injuries could be easily repaired, and the keeper assured his new guests that they were welcome to remain. However, by 2269, the keeper had passed away, and the planet had begun to take up a new life and a new purpose. The Enterprise returned in Once Upon a Planet ready to engage in more relaxation, but found instead a bitter and angry central computer system. The system, rather than replicating its guests' desires, instead decided to play games with them. These games included screaming dragon-like things in the sky, as well as kidnapping Uhura. Thankfully, they kidnapped the one person who could communicate best with them, and they eventually conceded, allowing the crew to return. It was effectively a giant holodeck, and they have never, ever broken in Star Trek, so really, where's the harm? Number 6. Dakala. Rogue worlds can lead to strange species thereon, and such is the case with Dakala. This planet had broken free from its star's orbit, and by the time Enterprise encounters it, there's no difference between day and night. It is a dark, lonely planet. But the crew of the Enterprise are not alone here. An alien species, the Eska, treat the planet as one large hunting ground. While breaking bread with them, Archer is distracted by a beautiful woman, one that he's seemingly met before, imploring him for his help. Though he does, in fact, know this woman, things are not quite what they seem. Dakala is home to a species that is telepathic, capable of using its power to get inside the heads of others. The Eska see them as less than sentient and have delighted in hunting these beings for 9 generations. Dakala was unusual for a rogue planet in that it supported indigenous life. The light of distant stars did manage to shine on the planet even if it never lifted from night to day. T'Pol theorized that the plants and fauna were sustained by the hot air vents releasing steam from the planet's core. While the telepathic species, known as the Wraith by the Eska, were able to communicate with Archer, there were several other native creatures as well, including the boreworms. Not the boreworms! Number 5. Megas 2. Megas 2 was a controversial planet in Star Trek's history, not least for being one of those center-of-the-galaxy locations that shouldn't technically exist. The magics of Megas 2 manages to sidestep that issue by also having the planet exist in an alternate dimension. One phaser blast dodged there, at least. The second, rather strange aspect of this strange world was the fact that it was populated by devils. When Larry Brody was writing the script for the episode, he originally pitched a story featuring the Enterprise meeting God. Now, where have we heard that before? Gene Roddenberry loved the idea. The network, however, was never going to allow the show to depict God in this way. They were, however, perfectly happy with a depiction of the devil, cloven hooves and all. The planet is depicted as candy-striped, though when the crew beams down, they're presented with 17th century Salem, with the locals depicting the religious zealots of the day. Instead of a witch burning, Kirk and Spock managed to convince the Megans to let them and their new friend Lucien go free. The episode received some criticism for a seemingly sympathetic portrayal of a satanic creature, yet it was hardly the first time that particular shot was fired against the show. A certain pointy-eared character caused some raised eyebrows in the cage, too. Number 4. Theta Zeta. Theta Zeta only received its name in the script for the end of Discovery's 3rd season, so most of you will simply know it as the dilithium planet at the center of the burn. Located in the Verubian Nebula, it was the crash site for the KSF Kieth, a Kelpian ship on which Dr. Issa served. She gave birth to her son Su'Kal in the ruins of her ship, and then, knowing that she would soon die, built a holographic world for him to play in and be occupied. Su'Kal was born on a world with various types of radiation, all of which combined to start warping his genes. He connected with the planet, and through it, the dilithium. It unfortunately acted like a resonance chamber, amplifying his own grief when his mother died. He screamed in agony, and in his pain, he inadvertently ended thousands of lives. The force that spread out from Theta Zeta caused every active warp core to breach in that moment, crippling much of the quadrant and reducing Starfleet to rudimentary forms of transportation. It took over a century for that crucial part of the puzzle to come to light, and to also remove Dakala from the planet for fear that he would cause another burn. It may have been a grand tragedy, but Theta Zeta is still an interesting world in a galaxy full of them. Number 3. Captain Lisa Cusack's crash site. The fourth planet of a star system in the Ruthenian sector is hardly a romantic description for a starship's final resting place, yet that is where the USS Olympia met her fate in The Sound of Her Voice. The planet was largely barren, with driving winds and rain coupled with high CO2 levels in the air, all of which made it a thoroughly unpleasant place to be. The unusual thing about this planet was not on its surface, but surrounding its atmosphere. The planet was encased in an energy barrier that attracted the Olympia's attention, though when the ship initiated scans, a Metreon radiation surge destroyed the ship and killed all aboard, save for the captain, Lisa Cusack. Though tragic, that still was not the strangest part. This barrier acted as a temporal transmitter. Though the captain survived both the Olympia's destruction and the crash of her shuttle, her distress calls were heard in the wrong time. When she spoke to the crew of the USS Defiant, she was talking to the future, as the messages were transmitted forward by 3 years. Though her body is eventually recovered by Sisko, Bashir, and O'Brien, it's to bring her back to Deep Space Nine for an Irish wake, rather than a welcome home. Number 2. The weird planet displaced in time. Despite Naomi Wildman's colorful description of this planet, the universe has yet to settle on a name for this world that Voyager encountered in 2376. The technical explanation for its weirdness was a tachyon core, a subspace particle field that ran between its two cores and a spinning speed similar to a quasar. All considered, it was a fairly strange planet. The emergency medical hologram was probably best equipped to describe the world, having spent a grand total of 18 minutes there. For the crew of Voyager, those 18 minutes were long enough. For the Doctor, those 18 minutes equated to over 3 years, a lot of memories, and a son named Jason. It's a long story. One suggested name for the planet was Kelmane's planet, named for the astronomer who dreamt of contacting the skyship. The short story 18 Minutes by Terry Osborne calls it Tahal Maroj. Meanwhile, Naomi Wildman originally voted for it to be called The Weird Planet Where Time Moved Very Fast and So Did the People Who Lived There. All very solid choices in the end. Voyager remained in orbit for mere days while centuries passed on the planet below. They were inadvertently responsible for seismic activity that eventually convinced enough of the indigenous species to consider them a threat. Though the planet fired a barrage of antimatter weapons at the ship, a scientist and astronaut was able to convince his people to help the ship, having already visited and discovered their secret. The planet's population was working on technology to allow them to join the rest of the galaxy by the time Voyager finally broke away. So, it's very likely that they may appear again. Who knows? Number 1. Takut. Most viewers are familiar with Vulcan, and many will be aware of its current or future name, Navarre. Yet, how many will be aware of the planet's binary twin, Takut? This planet is strange because, depending on the day and the person speaking, it both exists and doesn't exist. In the first televised episode of the original series, The Man Trap, Spock states that Vulcan has no moon. However, in yesteryear, there is clearly something in the sky over Vulcan's horizon. This something would go on to be called Takut, depending on the source and the time of year. Takut was accidentally created by an animation artist during production on Yesteryear, who, evidently, didn't receive the note that Vulcan should be moon-free. The theatrical edition of the motion picture also featured a moon, or planetoid, in orbit over Vulcan, but this was removed from the director's cut. Fontana helped reconcile this error first through print publication in 1975 via a series of stories, and then later in Jean Laura's 1984 novel, The Vulcan Academy Murders. The 1994 novel, Sarek by A.C. Crispin, further explains that the planet has different names for various times during the year, which also helps to explain the titles, including the Watcher, that it had been given in the course of its rather odd existence. And those were 10 of the strangest worlds in Star Trek. If you enjoyed this video, then go ahead and give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more content like this, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below. You can also find us on social media at TrekCulture or at TrekCultureYT. You can also find me on Blue Sky or Instagram under the handle TrekkieBree. But until next time, I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and don't forget to live long and prosper.